Hello everyone, welcome to 27 and we're back with the Maserati and I've got a Porsche here today as well. So I've had the GranSport for about 2 months now, so I thought it was time we do a bit of an update. Rather than just do that, let's actually compare it, one of the competitors of the time. So we have a 997S, I think there's about 2 years apart. This is 2006, this is 2008. Price-wise, they were pretty much the same at the time. My GranSport, without any options, was around £67,000, something along those lines. Even cruise control was an option on this car, so you get an idea. So really, fully spec'd, you're looking at maybe 75, 80,000. And these, I think, retailed for around 65, 70 as well. So it's a really good comparison. Now, at the time, they did say that the 911, and it's known anyway, is by far the best all-round car. But it will still be interesting to compare. The Maserati's a bit flawed. I've got used to it a bit more. I know a little bit more about what's going on with that. I do expect the 997 to be a better all-rounder, but still, we're going to take them both for a quick drive and see how they compare. Having spent a bit more time with it, I have to say that the faults that have been reported are a bit more apparent, particularly so with the gearbox. It really isn't very good, and there's lots of reasons for that, but I mean, first of all, it is just too slow. Now it's in sports mode, and you do change, and it changes up fairly quickly, but I think on a gearbox like this, it just needs to be instant for it not to get in the way, and it certainly isn't instant. Also, changing down, it's quite jumpy, it's not smooth, it just doesn't seem to work very well. It's fine, you can drive the car, it's usable. You can completely forget using it in automatic mode because it is bloody useless. It just holds on to the gears for way longer than it actually needs to. Ideally, you want to have the gear change in sports mode because that's the quickest setting and it makes it just about bearable. However, in sport mode, as it is now, it makes the ride really unsettled. And it does feel like quite a big beast. It's quite comfortable, there's a lot of room in here, the driving position is nice, it's nicely trimmed out, it's a lovely interior. But doesn't really feel like a completely sort of cohesive package. The ride is definitely not resolved. It's not terrible, it's hard to explain. It absorbs small undulations quite well, but anything bigger than that, you just always sort of feel it coming through. I remember driving this same road in a 355 Ferrari, and it was so much fun. With this, it's more like, I don't know, trying to thread an elephant through a needle or something. It's not bad, and the engine, it brings some fun into it. And it's progressive, it's torquey, it's got top end, it's got everything, it sounds great. Definitely the highlight. Thing is, it doesn't really fulfill any particular function. It's not particularly good as a tourer because the suspension is too stiff. It's definitely not good as a scratcher. It's not an all-rounder. The steering is like devilishly quick, really, it really is. It's super responsive, but it's quite light and a little bit lacking in feel. It's a car with lots of contradictions. That makes it quite lovable in a way, and certainly doesn't, it means it's quite interesting. It's never boring. I do really like it, but it has its problems. I think it's one of the last old-style Italian cars that had some really good attributes, but also some massive flaws thrown in at the same time. It is still fun to hustle around, but it just feels like it's maybe doing it a little bit grudgingly. Just swapped over to the 997. This is actually a Tiptronic. I thought it would be a good comparison with a Maserati because after all, the Maserati, although it's a robotized manual, it is still it's not a proper manual, so I thought it would make the comparison fairer between the two. Plus, a friend of mine has this, a Carrera S with a tip, so I thought it would make sense. You know what, I have to tell you that in terms of the speed of the gear changes, this is actually about the same as my fancy robotized manual in the Maserati. And immediately this feels like a completely different car to the GranSport. It feels smaller, it feels like you're sitting much lower down. I'm in the sport setting now, and actually the suspension, it also feels stiff. It's bouncing around all over the place, but somehow it just feels better than the Maserati. Feels like it's riding over the bumps. This is stiff and you can feel the bumps, but it does still, you know, you can tell it's actually absorbing them. The steering is so much more natural. It's much slower, but not in any way worse for that. One thing that you can tell is I think this still has a torque converter, and you can tell that in the response and the power. It definitely doesn't feel anywhere near as quick as the GranSport. It's got a good turn of speed, it's nice and flexible, it's revvy, but you do feel a little bit like you're disconnected from everything on that. So much more feel coming in through the steering. It's just reminds you again how much part of the driving experience it is to have good feel coming through. It's much more resolved as a car than the GranSport, and I think the interviewers at the time, they were right. With some cars, with hindsight, you know, after a few years, things like the 964 RS, I think the interviewers at the time, they get them wrong, but with this and the GranSport, I think they very much got it right. The 997 is a really good car. I think the equivalent 996 would probably be a little bit more lithe on its feet. You can feel a bit of weight behind this Porsche. It's not a little light ballerina, but it's very good. Much more fun on corners than the Maserati, which I think they tried to make artificially feel better just with that super quick feeling. Few tiny little rattles as well, so in that way it's no better than the Mazda, but the interior is definitely a bit better built. I think it feels less fragile than the Maserati does. Rev it up to the top and it picks up even more, so you do need to be revving it to get it to go. Once you do though, it's actually, my impressions that the Maserati was much quicker. I think it is quicker, I don't know about much quicker though. But all in all, really, really impressed with the Porsche. There's no surprise there. Reviewers have been saying that 911s are brilliant for like decades and decades. It is a really, really good car and much more resolved, much more complete than the Maserati. I think the Maserati is fun, but as a constant everyday companion, compared to this, I think it really would get on your nerves a bit. This is just, it's a good car. It is a good car. Thank you all very much for watching. Jerry, thank you very much for lending me your car. Bit disappointed that the Tiptronic isn't quite as shit as I thought it would be, but honestly, it's a good car. Thank you very much. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe, leave comments, likes, all that kind of stuff, and see you for the next one.